Hey everyone, and welcome to my Procreate demo for the piece I call Stormy. So, Stormy is a tattoo that I have on my right hand that I got a few years ago, and sometimes I make up sort of like backstories for some of them and think about like whether or not they could be characters. So for the fun of it, I decided to just sort of do that with this design. I took the anchor out of his head just because I thought that the design would get really complicated really fast, and like a lot of people, I drink a ton of coffee, so I thought it'd be fun to just sort of have this like stormy cloud guy that looks like he just woke up and he's trying to just have his morning coffee. It's overall pretty straightforward as far as a piece goes, but since it's all drawn and it's not full body, but it's got more of a body, I thought it'd be fun to sort of do a full breakdown here. So you get to see the sketch here. This was the rough planning of generally what it was going to look like. When I started, I didn't exactly know if I was going to make it look super graphic or if I was going to render it or what I was going to do. And in the middle of it, I decided that I was going to render it. But what I wanted to do first was just get some really clean lines down. They're not clean in the sense that they're like ready for a finished piece, but they're just really straightforward and loud, and I can use them as a guide as I continue to go on. So I don't know if I'm going to actually release this before or after my techniques video, which I just finally got my tripod. I did a test video the other day. If you watch me on Instagram, you saw that, and it's going to be pretty cool, I think. I'm just finding time to actually sit down and put it all together. So in the meantime, you're going to see a lot of things here that you'll probably have questions on. Again, if the techniques video hasn't come out yet, I'll definitely go over that in that video. And then of course at the end of that video I'll also ask people if there's anything that I didn't go over that you would have liked to see. So for the most part, I'll just give a cursory just sort of a slight overlook of what I'm doing here, and I'm not going to go too far in depth into any particular thing. So I used the soft airbrush to start planning out the cloud part. And then the lightning part, I just used the select tool to do that. Then went in and started blocking everything else out. I decided that I was going to put the the coffee cup layers behind the hand, so I had to go in there and clean up the hand real quick. So if you actually know the layer stack for that hand and coffee cup and all that is the coffee cup is actually behind all of the skin layer, basically. So yeah, I didn't know how graphic I was going to go originally, and then decided to go more rendered, but then at some points I was like, well, maybe some elements will be a little bit more graphic. So at this point, the water was going to be very graphic, the rain, and the lightning bolts were going to be very graphic, and aside from that, I didn't really know what else would be graphic versus rendered, but I knew I wanted that eye to be rendered, so here I am diving into that eye. I thought that doing a close-up would be cool for this, just because, you know, eyes and hands and you know, things like that, they are sometimes the smallest part of a piece. Maybe not in this case because he's got a giant eye, but they're the smallest part of a lot of pieces, and they usually require the most amount of work in order to effectively pull them off. The design I have on my hand has these dots that sort of go around the iris, so I wanted to make sure I captured that. That's what those dots are right there. And you can see in here I made them little divots with a little cast shadow in there, using select and an airbrush to sort of make that drop more convincing. So here we're putting on eyelashes. I wanted the eye to be symmetrical like that because that's the way it is in the original tattoo design. And then just for fun of it, I wanted to go in and put like these little highlights on the eyelashes so that the eyelashes felt like really big and three-dimensional. I'm a fan of Todd Shore, the sort of American surrealist painter, ever since I went and saw a gallery of his a bunch of years ago. So every now and then you'll see things in my work that might sort of speak to that, and it's because I just love the way he treats like materials and the way he maybe will over accentuate like the form of something, like say those eyelashes. So every now and then that influence comes back. So here I am making the lightning bolts more graphic. They almost are like these cardboard cutouts sort of sticking out of the cloud. I actually considered making them glow at one point, but then I thought that that was going to be too much. I thought it was kind of nice to just have them be, I don't know, almost like a material you can't put your finger on. Like if he has this lightning coming out of his head, that it's almost like these big cartoony just pieces of lightning. So now I'm starting to do the cloud part. Now the way I do a majority of the cloud part is using a lot of layers, sort of using a circle airbrush and putting down that circly part and then erasing away from it, and then a circly part and then erasing away from it, and then that's how you sort of get this. Then there's some areas where that's very patterny and just very repetitive, and then there's other parts where I'm being a little bit more deliberate about what I'm doing there, and you can sort of see it as it's going. So then I knocked back that whole lower left half of his face I guess, in order to just give a little bit of form to this. Now I'm going through and highlighting some of the clouds here, and then the last thing I do is I'll put like sort of a streak of light going down the front upper part of his cloud head, and then I also at the very end will take that whole mess of layers. Oh, here I am adding more noise to using one of the random brushes. I honestly don't remember which one it was. It might have been like the watercolor brush or something, that's default with Procreate. So yeah, here I'm adding shadow. Then you'll see that last layer of brightness. See there, I'm actually casting shadow from the eyelashes because I just thought, I think that that's fun. If you go back and you look at like my old Wolverine that I did, and he's got like chin hairs and those cast shadows and arm hairs and those cast shadows, I just think that that's kind of funny. And then here I'm duplicating the whole thing and blurring it just to soften the overall look of the cloud. Then right here, that's all just done on one layer. I knew it was going to be small and insignificant, so I just laid down like a little quick cloud that was breaking off of his head. That wasn't in the original sketch. On the suit, I used the Nico roll brush, which I mentioned in the one of the previous videos, which was brought to my attention. It was designed by Nico Lockertson, who does a lot of stuff for Procreate, so pretty cool brush. Here, I just, on one or two layers, banged out this buckle real fast, and then erased away where the suit was. That one's pretty straightforward. You can go back and watch that in more detail if you'd like. And now we're on to the hand. It's one of the bigger elements of the piece. I wanted to give it this sort of blocky look. In general, the sort of thoughts behind this was sort of balancing a little bit more rendered, a little bit more graphic. So the suit is really graphic, with only one extra layer sort of defining it, and then or one extra value. The hand is fairly it's a fairly good mix between graphic and rendered. Then the cloud is much more rendered, the eye is much more rendered, the lightning bolts are much more graphic. So these were sort of the choices that I was making as I was going through the piece, trying to figure out just what I wanted the look of this thing to be. So here I'm just adding the shadow layers, the darkest value. Overall, it's not a very dark, like high contrast hand, so there's not a whole lot going on. I think it's only like 4 layers to define the main shape of it, and then the blush layer, the fingernail layer, which is just a white that's had the opacity lowered on it, and then another layer of white over it for like the quick, or I guess that's not technically the quick, but that part of your fingernail where it gets white towards where it connects, and then the part where it's white where it's lifted off your finger. And then now here I painted the cup, but I did it using regular layers, like just like a lighter brown or a darker brown. But what you can see just flash through real quick right there was, after I did the logo, I had to switch those layers to an orange set to overlay and then like a purple set to multiply so that it would go over that logo and give the logo some depth as well. So now I'm going in just adding some rim light, and then there's some shadowing on the shirt. I wanted to add some like atmosphere, like it's coming down from the clouds, some shadow and atmosphere. And now I'm going in and doing the water, which I decided that I wanted to do like a mix between graphic and rendered. So it's obviously got a shape that's very graphic, but then trying to add some render to it. So these are more or less successful. I probably could have done better, but at the same time I was starting to wrestle with the layer limits. At some point during this piece, I've actually duplicated the canvas in Procreate, and I've just started flattening things in order to try and get some layers back. This is a fairly large canvas for Procreate, so I was only given, I think you only get 40 some layers. So now what I'm doing here is I'm trying to flatten these raindrops and then add the reflection of whatever's sort of nearby it in order to try and manage those layers a little bit. It was a little bit of a struggle, but I still think when the piece is all said and done, they work out quite nice. All those little highlights are done using the add layer. So now I go back in and put in those little zigzags, those little smaller sort of lightning bolts, and then I go in and put like an outline around the entire guy. So this is all on the layer that's the most back before you hit the background. And then I actually duplicate this duplicate this and slow it down a lot so you can see it. Again, I know these are really messy and you'll see this in the techniques video, but there's a ton of stuff that's going on here that happens very quickly, and it's me essentially dressing the image before it's ready to be done. So this is the first time through. You can just sort of watch it happen, and now I'll try to talk through it as quickly as possible, and here we go. So I just used a white brush on top to add noise to the whole thing, then I eventually lower the opacity of that, a dark one around the sides, multiply, then I added noise to the lightning bolts just to give them some texture, duplicated his entire body, turned it into a shadow and just distorted it on the wall, added some blur and some color balance tweaks and some contrast tweaks, and then at the very end I made it a little bit more orangey than it was originally just to give it a little bit of an aged look. So I know that went really fast there at the end. This is the finished picture right here. I hope you dug it. I know it's a little weird, a little fun. Just thought it'd be kind of cool to do. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider subbing and liking. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.